Good afternoon, and welcome to this webinar from Construction News in association with Egnyte. Today, our expert panel will discuss how contractors can move from theory to best practice when using artificial intelligence and machine learning. We'll look at the most promising use cases for these emerging technologies in construction, plus the broader commercial and strategic implications for the construction industry. Members of the audience will have the chance to ask questions via the Q&A icon on your Zoom screens during the speaker presentations. And that gives me a perfect segue to start introducing our panel. We're joined by Alistair Reisner.
Hello.
Hi, Alistair. He's the Chief Executive of the Civil Engineering Contractors Association. Also, Andrew Johnson. Hi, Andrew.
Hi, everyone.
Andrew is Training and Development Lead at Okana Global. Next, Pavlina Nikolova.
Hello, everyone.
Pavlina is Architecture, Engineering and Construction Practice Lead for EMEA at Egnyte. Next, we have Tom Loader. Hello, Tom.
Hello.
And Tom is Director of Digital and Transformation at Multiplex. Last but not least, Ben Jowett.
Good afternoon, everyone.
And Ben is Head of Digital Transformation at SES Engineering Services. You'll hear from each speaker in turn, and then we'll have time for some panel discussion Q&A at the end. So without any further ado, allow me to hand over to Alistair Reisner.
Thank you very much, Ben, and it's great to be on this call today. This is a really interesting subject, something that I think is probably not just on the lips of everyone in construction, but globally, it's just a hugely interesting topic. To kick things off today, I'm just going to present a few slides about some work that my organisation, the Civil Engineering Contractors Association, published early this year. I hope it sets a bit of the context for what we'll later talk about as a panel. So if you give me just one moment, I will share my slides. If someone could let me know when they're visible. Is that coming up? Yes, excellent. So artificial intelligence in UK construction, a hugely exciting topic. I should say this is a slightly cut down version of what I would normally present on this, but that's because I think we do want to give plenty of time for discussion. So what I'm going to talk through is a little bit about the applications that we see in terms of the use of AI in the UK construction sector. And we've broken it down into a number of job categories. So first and foremost is around project planning and design, how we get projects to the point of delivery. Second, around management, so what AI might mean for the way that we run construction businesses. Third, we've got commercial, so all of the contractual and financial elements of delivery. We see that AI, this is one of the areas where we're seeing the most rapid progress in terms of the implementation of AI tools. Then we get to the crux of the matter, the delivery. So what is AI doing or might be doing in the future to change the way that we actually build things on site? And then we've got support services. So this is really a wraparound of everything that doesn't come into the top four categories. But we thought it was important to break it down into these five categories because the implementation of AI will be different across each of these, and trying to just look at AI in the round in construction may just leave a bit of a confusing melange. So it's better to try and cut down this into specific bite-sized chunks. So I'll pick up the first of those, which is project planning and design, or at least a worth.
Alistair, I don't mean to interrupt. Can you try to click full screen because we currently see the notes as well?
Oh. It's full screen for me at the moment.
Is it?
Is that better?
Yes, now it's perfect. Thank you. My
apologies. You've seen all of my notes, so I do apologise for that. Yes, I'll move forward to the next slide, which is breaking the first of these down into the specifics. So when we look at project planning and design, I think the first thing is around this is a laborious task, and the whole point of AI is to try and insert itself into our business processes to take away the need to do tasks that could otherwise be done by the machine. So with design optimization, you can produce thousands of designs for whatever built asset it is, whether it's buildings, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's homes. And so this can then be used not only to produce those designs, but to assess and propose what the optimal solution to a particular brief might be. We've also got automation. So once you've got that design, as new requirements come forward or changing views of stakeholders, you can automatically update those designs by using AI to bring through data from reference designs to update those designs as you go through. Then we've got error detection. So where you do have designs, the ability to understand where the potential is for error and to search out and find those within a design, or even to say, you're producing a design, here are some areas where you may produce errors, to almost get ahead of the problem before those errors arise. This is, I think, one of the areas that we found really interesting. So part of that whole front-end process for projects is around engagement with stakeholders out in the communities that these projects are being built in. We're already seeing tools that will go out and sniff social media feeds, internet, web pages, anything that's out there in the digital world, and start to build a picture of what the perception of your project is without you having to go back and do that on a manual basis. So we're already seeing organizations that are learning about their projects using AI and are able to tweak based on the feedback that process is providing. And then we've got simulation and visualization. So taking those designs and utilizing them to produce really high quality simulations of the asset, both what it looks like, but also how it works. Now that's something that we can already do, but AI just augments that and delivers better outcomes. So then moving forward to the management world, anyone that's involved in construction knows by definition it is a complex environment in which to work. Everyone that's in a managerial role is having to draw down on all of that information and make decisions on a daily, hourly, minute-by-minute basis. So AI can be a part of that process, guiding toward better decisions. One of the themes that I'll probably come back to numerous times throughout this is ultimately the human does have to still make the decision. It probably isn't appropriate to hand over total control to a machine in terms of making decisions. But also it can look at those processes that you have in your business and optimize the workflows and automate some of those tasks. So taking, again, away some of the grind work, leaving people to focus on the things that really matter. Project scheduling, so making sure that all of the various elements of the project are accurately planned and delivered on the optimized schedule, and being able to update that schedule as you go along as things change. And finally, from a managerial point of view, you want to know everything that's going on from a health, safety, environment, and quality perspective across maybe one site or a range of sites. So AI can aggregate and analyze that data, providing that in real time. Moving forward to the commercial side of things, look, I think if we know where projects have gone wrong very visibly in our sector in recent years, inaccurate cost forecasting has often been at the heart of that. AI enables the analysis of very, very large data sets to produce much better cost management and cost forecasting going forward, to provide that on a real-time basis and adjust based on external factors. Can also improve estimation so that tenders and breakdowns of costs are much more accurate going forward. And again, here's another area where we're already seeing significant movement, which is the ability to analyze complex contract documents and identify where the risks are in that, particularly for small businesses who perhaps don't have in-house counsel to do that job for them. It's that ability to read and understand those risks. And finally, supply chain optimization. So going out and aggregating data from across the supply chain to understand what's going on in that ecosystem at a pace that perhaps wouldn't be possible if you were doing that by hand. We then get to site. So here we're seeing things like the use of data from plant. So much of the plant that's already used on construction sites has telematics, so the ability to measure its use, but we're not making good use of that. So AI is now drawing all of that data from a fleet of plant and giving much better insight on predictive maintenance for that plant, and also things like how to reduce your use of fuel within that plant. Work simulation, I talked about this in the design context, but the ability to go out and simulate the work beforehand using AI to create those simulations. Again, it's something that we can already do, but we're seeing AI enhance our ability to produce those simulations. Automation of plant and tools. We know that across industry, there is a lot of work to move to more automated, taking the driver out of plant, allowing tools to work on a robotic basis rather than having an operator for them. And at the heart of that is artificial intelligence. And finally, again, an area where we're already seeing progress is on the use of on-site safety monitoring. So AI taking particularly camera data and also data from wearable tech and warning of risks that it can identify by drawing on historic data about where the risks might arise. Finally, support services. So here, I think things like monitoring your compliance against whether it's regulatory, health and safety, market analysis, so going out and chewing huge amounts of data as to what's going on in the markets you operate and predicting future demand. Customer relationship management, so similarly, understanding who you work with and providing insights on those organizations. Bid preparation, this is a really interesting one. We've seen the government has published policy because it is concerned about people are using artificial intelligence to prepare bids for work. But where used appropriately, again, taking away some of the grind of that to ensure that you can produce high quality bids, leaning on the power of AI. And finally, in recruitment, we're seeing that candidates are being screened by AI, may even be interviewed by AI initially prior to going forward to a face-to-face interview with an individual. So that's a very quick canter through some of the use cases. I'm now going to very quickly go through what we see as some of the risks. So first is around the ethics. There are real concerns about what impacts the use of AI will have on humans. I'll expand on that a little bit more as we go through. IP, there's current government consultation on whose data is being used to build these AI models, and do you have the right to use that data? Privacy, similarly, if you as an employer are putting your data into a model, does that include your employees' data, and what happens to that information when it spits out the other end of the model? Security, as with anything digital, there are bad actors out there. So is there a risk that AI provides another trapdoor for bad actors to enter into and compromise your digital assets? Dependence, I think, is going to be a really interesting one. We've already seen in schools where they're reporting that school children are just using AI to do their homework. And that's at one level. That generation is going to be in the workforce fairly soon. And are they going to be reliant to do their job to the point where they couldn't do it themselves? May they even have a job? One of the risks that's highlighted across the economy is, does this push people out of roles as their job is taken over by AI? Cost. None of these things come for free. While I think the cost of entry is relatively low at the moment, that is because investors see this as an opportunity. I think the cost of AI solutions will only increase going forward. Data quality, we talk about rubbish in, rubbish out. If the quality of the data that's informing your AI model is poor, so will the outputs that you produce from that. So getting that data quality right is really, really important. Fragmentation, there could be a proliferation of different tools out there in the market. And does that mean that we lose the opportunity because everyone is using different tools that don't talk to each other? The flip side of that is potentially we might get just one big supplier. And does that mean that they have monopoly type power in the market? And what will that mean in terms of, again, the costs of this? Knowledge and skills. Do we have the knowledge within all of our businesses to implement AI? And health, safety, and well-being. one of the big risks is, as we've seen with any new technology, have we fully understood the risks of using this? So if we're using, let's say, AI-enabled drones on site, have we programmed them, or does their AI make them operate in a way that means that they won't crash into individuals, or any of the other risks that might emerge? So finally, I'll just bring us up on regulation. So there is no dedicated AI regulation in the UK at the moment, but here are some of the acts that will apply related to some of those risks I've talked about. There is also potential future legislation. It was mentioned in the King's speech that the government intends to legislate in this space, and we will also be impacted by regulation from Europe, even if we're no longer part of the EU. Finally, I'll leave you with some points to consider. So, do you know how AI is already being used in your company? Are you documenting that use, including thinking about what its impacts are on your staff, other individuals in society? Have you carried out a risk assessment in the same way that you would for any other function that you did? Have you got a process to start introducing these tools safely? This is a really crucial one. Are you managing the relationship with third parties? With many of the free to use tools that are out there, or low cost tools, you're passing your data to them and they control that data. Are you comfortable about that? Do you have policies for your organization and staff? Is it accessible? Do your staff know about those policies? Are the roles and responsibilities for the rollout of AI clear? And does your AI have a direct impact on individuals? If so, how are you ensuring fairness within that? Sorry, that was a very quick canter through, but hopefully we can pick up some of these themes as we get into the main discussion. I'll stop now.
Thank you very much, Alistair. You will now hear from Pavlina Nikolova, but first let me remind everyone in the audience that you're free to use the Q&A function on your screens to ask questions during the presentations. But over to you, Pavlina.
Thank you, Ben. And hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be today at this session. As Ben mentioned at the beginning, I'm AEC Practice Lead at Egnyte. For those who are not familiar, Egnyte is a content management platform in the cloud that helps companies in the industry to govern and collaborate on their business critical content. I've been in the industry for about 10 years now, and I'm a big advocate of implementing technologies that enhance productivity without overwhelming the end user, because the best technology is the one that people actually want to use. And when it comes to AI, there are lots of benefits. And thank you, Alistair, for setting up the scene. You did a great job introducing those use cases, and we see lots of applications already happening within the industry. But there are also some challenges, as also Alistair highlighted in his presentation, and I want to pick up on some of those and elaborate a bit more on them. And when it comes to AI from data management perspective, it can deliver tremendous value when it comes to gaining insights across current and past projects that we had, optimizing workflows, automating time-consuming processes like, for example, comparing proposals to RFPs, or understanding and extracting data from building specifications. These are just a few examples. But in order to gain this potential and to get the most of AI, we need to do some groundwork first and prepare our data for the AI implementation. So I'll pick a couple of the challenges that Alistair mentioned, one of which is the data and the data quality. We know this is a big challenge within the industry, not only in our industry, but we know that we work with multiple versions of the documents that are touched by multiple stakeholders at the same time. So what we need to first do is get rid of the redundant, obsolete and trivial data, and to establish which data we want to use. What we also advise is to bring AI to your data instead of taking your data out in order to use AI. And this is also sometimes a challenge, because if the company doesn't provide you with a safe environment to use AI tools, then employees will go out and copy and paste sensitive information in third-party domains, public domains, etc., because they do want to optimize their workflows, and they do want to save time in order to do their day-to-day job. So we advise companies in the industry to provide those tools within their own data environment. To do that, though, we need to make sure that permissions, who is accessing what type of data, are very well aligned, because people get very creative once they get access to the data, what type of questions they want to ask, sensitive information. So we have to make sure we also know where in our data we have sensitive information. We need to scan the data and find like payroll information, passport information. But we also, when we work on sensitive projects like military projects, for example, we have data that we don't want everyone to see or to be able to edit, download or delete, and etc. So we need to make sure those permissions are aligned. When it comes to privacy, as Alistair mentioned, we need to make sure when we choose a vendor, we need to make sure that they're not using our data to train their AI engines, or they're not sharing the information outside of our domain. When it comes to trustworthiness of the data, we see a lot of hallucination happening when it comes to AI tools and their applications. So in order to trust the data that the AI is generating for you, you should be able to always track back which documents and which sources the AI is using to give you those results. And last thing I will mention is about cybersecurity. So the irony is that we can use AI to protect us from AI attacks. We can use it against itself. So we can use, for example, machine learning to detect unusual behavior, or to prevent us from data leakage as well. The good news is that all the points that I've mentioned, they're not hard to do. There are solutions that can help you to do that. The bad news is that it's not a one-time exercise. You need to constantly monitor your company data for sensitive information, permissions, etc. It's not something that we do once and we forget about it. And that's my quick introduction and my line of interest in the AI applications.
Thank you very much, Pavlina. Over to Tom Loader now. The floor is yours.
Cheers, Ben. Tom Loader, Director of Digital Transformation at Multiplex. For those that are unaware of the company, we're a building contractor working out of Australia, the UK, and Toronto in Canada, about 2,500 people globally. So I'm actually going to focus this section, this 5 minutes, on, I guess, some of the practical things we're doing today, and also a bit about where we're focusing it as a contractor. So I think it's clear, very clear, as I think we probably all get, that the AI and the power of it, even in its current form, is potentially quite radical for contracting. It's a business model, of course, that is in essence paid to project manage and make timely decisions, administer contracts, and plan a lot of activities on large construction projects, understand the risks involved. And most of these things fit firmly and squarely in the AI that we even have today, let alone in the future. And there's no doubt in my mind that it's going to have a big impact. Now, the thing we've got at the moment, if we look where we start, we've got the sheer volume of tasks and risks and activities that are involved in any large construction project. They're enormously difficult to tackle and work through. So we have lots of very committed people, very well-educated people in our industry working in enormously hard environments, try and deploy that expertise. And that became really part of our kind of founding thinking behind where we would start to deploy some of the AI. How do we make people's lives easier? How do we free the time up for them in the delivery of these projects and repurpose that energy and that time into making even better quality buildings and maybe even getting close to program and budget and also try and alleviate some of the stress that is in people's lives, the burden that's there. So this became a framework for us to work to. So over the last few years, we've been developing this program of work, and I'm just going to split it into 4 pillars that I think may be interesting for the audience. The first thing that we did, and this actually started before the AI discussion, was how do we get our data platform in a good shape in the business? If we're going to have any future using any of this data, be it with AI or not, it had to be in a good place. So that started around 6 years ago, and it really just formed into how could we monitor projects more effectively through things like dashboards. What it meant was that we had a lot of connected technology then in the business that's now proving that it gives us a good foundation from which to overlay Gen AI and agentic AI, which I'll come on to in a minute. But that's taken investment. The company's invested over $5 million in this so far. And of course, as I think Alistair said near the start, these costs invariably will go up as the solutions become a bit more tied and addicted to the systems that are provided to us. So, but we have the infrastructure there. That's the first bit. Along with that, it was also an investment in data literacy, and to bring people in the business along with us on this journey, we needed to make sure they understood where data comes from, how it's secured, how it's managed, how it's cleaned, and how it can be put to use. And that has been a really, really worthwhile program. And we leaned on the apprenticeship levy for that. So it was a really good use of that fund. Now, the big turning point for us was actually when we started to look at where are we going, if we're going to invest in AI, where are we going to point it? And the first point, like any good business really should, is understand where we underperform. Have a good look at where we underperform as a business, and actually start to use some of the AI tools, analyst tools, researcher tools, to analyze the data that we have to see where the underperformance is. So that pointed out a bunch of areas where we could start to focus some of this improvement. The next bit over the top of that was, how do we do that work? How do we work? And this is what our people do every single day. When they open their laptop on a Monday morning through to closing on a Friday or a Saturday, is what are the tasks that people really get stuck into every day, and can we make them more efficient? Can we take a 10-task thing down to a 5-task thing? And this really started to get into the granular of where we could start to develop some of the solutions with AI. So where we are today is we have the data literacy program done, and we understand where we want to apply it. Now, I'd love to sit here and say we have all these wonderful AI solutions that we could talk about now, but we're in the process of development as it stands today. And there's 2 main areas for us. One is agentic AI, so development of agents to augment or automate some of those tasks I was talking about there, understanding the tasks that people undertake, and streamlining those, really freeing their time up to be able to do their work really, really effectively for our business, which would then trickle down into the quality of the product we do. And then a really good quality Gen AI assistant. We've got Copilot Chat deployed to the organization that's already proven great guns, and we will develop that into something we're going to call Multiplex IQ over time. So there's a few things in there, with the Copilot release, the understanding of where we need to focus the development, and now it's about bringing that talent in to develop that agentic AI solution for our business over the next 12, 24 months. And that will mainly be focused in planning, design management, commercial, and change management. So that's where we are today, Ben. Hopefully some of that was useful to the audience.
I'm sure it was. Thank you very much, Tom. And just skimming the tip of the iceberg, I'm sure. Next up, you will hear from Andrew Johnson. Over to you, Andrew.
Thanks very much, Ben. Good afternoon, everyone. As said, Andrew Johnson. I lead the training development for Okana. Okana, you might have known it. It's formerly BIM Academy. So if those of you that know, yes, BIM Academy and became Okana like this time last year. Digital consultancy, and I am lucky enough to lead on all of the services when it comes to digital transformation. Right, where do we start? So I'm going to take you on a bit of a journey. So my background, quite a diverse background. I served 24 years in the military, and as Alistair said about telematics, I worked on plant equipment. Back then it used Jedi skills, no telematics or anything. It was just using the eyes to actually see and then experience. But innovation has been a huge part of that. And as I excelled all the way through the 24-year career, I ended up teaching civil engineering, and that was my background. Left the military in 2019 and went straight into industry into BIM, so building information modeling. Seen the shiny things, wanted to do information management, and also as well, I've heard of back then it was about digital twins, and really insightful, I would say. Fast forward. So let's fast forward now. Loads of shiny things, and especially since the release in 2003 of ChatGPT. Before ChatGPT, I'd heard of AI and machine learning, but generally it was people in computer science and people doing coding and so on like that. Suddenly, we all got released to it and free as well. Big master plan of OpenAI to do that, and suddenly get over 100 million people within 1 month. To beat that, Instagram, it took them 9 months. So you can see how fast that accelerated there. And feeding it. And for the past 2-3 years, we've been feeding this monster, I would say. And that's just OpenAI. And of course, you've got Gemini with Google, and then you've got Anthropic with Claude. And then, of course, we've got all of the other ones, Manus and DeepSeek. And again, there's so many models to use. Alistair, I went through and I was ticking all of the things there. He came up with some fantastic ones about like ethics, privacy, IP. So I would probably say the past 2 years has been a bit like the Wild West. Everyone's been using these tools and like, woohoo, yeah, fantastic. Get me an answer, write my articles, do all my work for me, outsource it all. Then organizations, and I did a presentation back in March about shadow AI. So you've got shadow IT, and IT are pretty good at this. So shadow IT that can block you using apps and software and so on, and you do have to get privileges to actually install. And it's generally by admin. Roll on to shadow AI. These are web-based. So unless you're turning the internet off for everyone in the office, they're not going to be able to use these tools. Well, of course, you want to do that. So again, we've got to. So how do you manage this? And I think this is where we are now. I think a lot of people are scared through data leakage and so on. And also as well, and you've seen, I think it's on the news about Marks and Spencer's and so on with the data leaks there and actually getting in and getting and very, very clever. So again, not through phishing or anything like that. This was actually embedded and injected straight into there using their call centers, which was quite scary. We are seeing this huge advancements. It can be used for good, and we are seeing it being used for bad. I was literally on a call just before this one, and someone told me that an AI bot rang them at 4:30 in the morning. And again, didn't realize it was an AI bot, but again, had all of these mechanisms in place that knew, oh, it's an iPhone. Oh, I've got to ring this 3 times. And then it bypasses, and then it'll ring through. So again, we're getting to clever technology there, and quite scary technology. Let's move on to the good things, though. So we are seeing a huge shift into this one, and a good thing that organizations are doing, and we're seeing this in O'Connor, and a lot of organizations are coming to us for help, as well as helping with to implement AI safely in organizations, and writing compliance and policies and so on like that to do it right, because it can be used as a fantastic tool to increase automations, but also as well, reduce all these mundane tasks. I wish I could do my timesheets, but sadly I can't do that. But again, we do all these tasks where we want to use these tools to improve it. So we're seeing a huge shift in digital transformation. I mentioned ISO 19650, so BIM. We're going to see a rewrite of that released in January next year. I have a feeling there's going to be an element of AI in that. I'll be disappointed if there isn't, because I do think that's the information management standard. So we do have that overlap where I do think there's going to be new roles where we're going to have like information managers AI, maybe, possibly, not too sure, but there could be. But we are seeing this acceleration. And again, I was at Digital Construction Week. I think there was quite a few people there from that's on this call, and everything was all about the advancements. I did a presentation in March and I said 2026 would be the year of agentic AI. Here we are in just June, and I was watching presentations where it was like, that's yesterday's news, and now it's Model Context Protocol, which is 2026. I'm like, so okay, MCP's taken over. So we're seeing huge advancements that's actually taken through, and actually as well can be used. Last week, ChatGPT has used integrations. Integrations is MCP. So now you can link to your PayPal. You can link to all of the apps that you use. So again, they've got like Teams. You can link to SharePoint. So suddenly, and I think someone mentioned on the call, we might just have one system like OpenAI that's just going to do everything for us. But anyway, I'm sure we're going to be discussing this a lot. That's just my opinion. And thank you, Ben.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Last but by no means least, and he's been very patiently waiting, over to Ben Jowett.
Thanks very much, Ben. I've got the difficult task of having to go last and try and not say anything that's already been said, but we'll give it a whirl. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining. My name's Ben Jowett. I'm the newly minted Head of Digital Transformation at SES Engineering Services. A big part of my role is essentially around how do we raise the overall digital maturity of our organisation that not only services the SES business internally in the wider Weights group, but also how do we enhance and add value to our customers as well in the processes and the different forms of products and processes that they're delivering. AI is a fascinating conversation, and there's been some really important points that have been made already in that space, and I think you tend to get the full spectrum of narrative in this space of the blue sky thinkers who are saying the future's already here and we're using it and we're fully fledged practitioners and well versed with AI, all through to the pragmatists of well, if we're going to scale it and be serious about it, then we really need to get our house in order and build good data quality and platforms into our processes and businesses first before we're serious about layering AI on top of it. I tend to fall more to kind of the latter side of that spectrum, where I tend to look at it a bit more pragmatically, whereby we're in the process of writing our digital transformation strategy at the moment. And obviously we've got one eye on things like artificial intelligence and machine learning, etc. But to meaningfully adopt, embrace and implement those types of technologies at scale requires a really concerted effort in raising the overall digital maturity of your business. So what I mean by that is we still have a lot of practitioners in different functions and departments in the business that are operating in Microsoft Word documents, Excel spreadsheets, you name it, which is relatively low level digital maturity and relatively unstructured data. So how do we actually raise the overall maturity of our business into, cloud hosted platforms where data quality is essentially built into it? And there's a neat segue into the point that Andrew raised of this is one of our kind of operating assumptions of raising the overall digital maturity of our business function by function is the opportunity to connect them over time as well. I think another thing that we're not particularly good at as an industry is connecting the dots between design data and commercial data, or planning data and estimating data, or a convergence point where all those things kind of meld in the middle. And to really get the true value out of AI, the kind of the operating premise that we're working on is we need to really earn the hard yards in digitizing our business in the first place and digitalizing it. And what I mean by that is connecting the dots together before we unleash AI in that space. And there's a really sort of fascinating conversation going on in the business around how do we use AI more, how do we use it responsibly, how do we develop our AI policies. And where I am seeing traction with it at the moment is the more kind of narrow use cases, and many of which have kind of already been mentioned. So in the spirit of time, I won't kind of retread that ground. But the more narrow use of AI, for example, bid writing, analyzing data sets to say, can you find me a recurring trend in this data set, or whatever it may be. They seem to get a lot more traction, but that's also because they're operating in a landscape where the variables are much less. I think when we're talking about an overall business and how a business behaves, that's where you need to start thinking of your business as more of kind of a neural network of how a brain in effect of how everything is connected to everything. And we're not really at a level of digital maturity where we can realize that. Another fascinating topic of conversation kind of threaded on top of that, operating on the presumption where we can realize this world where everything is connected to everything, is what's really going on in the software world and technology vendors around. There's been a lot of people getting hot under the collar around people claiming that software as a service is dead and SaaS is dead, and given the rise of kind of agentic AI. And one of the points that I've continuously made around that is it's kind of been misunderstood, that whole narrative around thinking software is dead and AI is going to take over. What's really at stake, and when you've heard that narrative really explained, I don't think that's what's really been proposed around, the death of SaaS, so to speak. What's really at stake is the evolution of SaaS, where how we understand software as a service and their kind of correlating technology stacks is what you have is really a CRUD database with processing logic and user interfaces layered on top of it. What AI is going to thrive on is really removing that user interface layer and actually access the data. So again, that comes back full circle to what's the quality of the data driving and the insights that AI is telling us. In the spirit of time, just to get to the Q&A as well, just some of the other things that I'll also mention as well is some of the emergence of tools that I'm seeing and we're actively researching in the generative AI space around generating designs, having compliance and coordination built in automatically rather than it being a reactive measure. That there's all these kinds of emergent opportunities, but the common denominator across it all is how good is the data that's driving this. And I tend to talk in analogies, but we generally don't build our buildings on sand, so we shouldn't really be thinking about AI in the same way. We should really be building it on solid foundations. And where our functions are a bit weaker digitally, that's where we have to put stronger foundations. And where the ones, for example, the BIM practitioners who may be a bit more au fait with data standards and information exchange protocols, that perhaps the foundations don't need to be as strong, but they still need a level of foundation. And then how do we connect those foundations together? So it's a really exciting space. I think that there is a whole load of promise offered by AI in its various forms, but it also needs to be tempered with pragmatism.
Thank you very much indeed, Ben, and thank you to all the rest of the panelists. I know that time is limited, and you've done an excellent job of educating the audience in such a short space of time, all of you. So we do have time for Q&A, which is just as well, because there are a lot of questions, some of which have been coming in live during the presentations themselves. So it's a question of where to start, I suppose. There's a lot of talk about data centers and expansion of data centers in the UK. Headline news made there recently. So how are, in your view, in the panel's view, how are AI providers tackling the problem of the energy required to power the computing that sits behind the AI engines? And is enough thought being given as to where the energy powering the host data center is coming from? Perhaps I could throw that open to you, Pavlina, and you can kick off that answer.
Yes, sure. So as a representative of a software provider, first of all, we chose one of the three top data centers or data center providers to work with, and we chose the one that is the most responsive on how they use energy, but also the responsibility relies on every single user on how we use technologies. Software providers can pick and choose what they think is best when it comes to energy saving, but it all relies on the end user, how responsively they use the technology, how often, and what data they're requesting on a daily basis.
Thank you, Pavlina. Does anyone else on the panel want to chip in on this answer?
Yeah, I can go, Ben. I would probably say don't release features like images like OpenAI did, because everyone jumped on it and suddenly then everybody's using large amounts to create Ghibli images of themselves and so on. So again, that was an area where they have been used a lot. just on, and again, we've been looking at this on especially when energy uses. So if we look back in 2023, AI data centers generally used about 320 terawatts an hour. They're estimating by 2030 that it's going to increase to 1,065 terawatts an hour. Again, a lot of these data centers need cooling. And again, I think this is where they're investing a lot of it, because they need cooling with water. And again, a lot of these data centers are based in quite arid environments as well, which then is taking the water source from these areas. So again, the likes of Google and AWS, Amazon Web Services, and Microsoft, they are going down a renewable power data center source. And again, because they in these hot climates, they are looking at other energies. So looking at like smart grids using sustainable, so maybe like solar, but also as well, in the UK, we've got the likes of like Dogger Bank just off the northeast coast as well, largest wind farm in the world. As well, we could be looking at renewable as well to actually power. And again, I know it's but again, we've seen that nuclear is coming as well as, again, a clean energy, has its risks, but again, it's going to be a good clean source as well of energy.
Just another kind of related topic on that as well. For those of you who are kind of Apple advocates, it was WWDC yesterday, and you know, they tend to be kind of at the cutting edge of a lot of these kinds of technological approaches. And one thing I noticed in their latest iOS updates as well is this shift to kind of localized AI that doesn't require an active internet connection to be driven. And that's a fascinating thread to follow in time of will that have any kind of offsetting impact on the burden it's putting on the data centers if AI can begin to operate kind of in a decentralized way. Given that's so fresh, it's probably something for us to reflect and think on. But I noticed that was a really interesting point that they made of making, you know, having Apple Intelligence pre-built into iPhones that doesn't require a live connection, and thereby you would assume offsetting the impact and the load requirement that it has on data centers.
Thank you, Ben. Just moving on to another question, and actually more than one person from the audience has touched on this next question, and perhaps it feeds into some of the things that the panelists were talking about, the for want of a better word, the fear that some people have about the evolution of AI and its growing importance in construction and the economy as a whole. So the question is, what role is there for regulators to respond to the growing use of AI? What can regulators do? Is it possible for regulators to keep pace with artificial intelligence that seems to be expanding at such an exponential rate? I wonder if, Alistair, if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, it's interesting because it's very rare that you get a technology emerging where the lead proponents of that technology quite openly state there's maybe a 5% chance that this will kill us all, and they're transparent about that. But that, to me, articulates the challenge. It is growing at a tremendous rate. It's sort of the uses of it. There's a huge opportunity there, but are we keeping pace with managing those risks? I think in reality, probably not. From a construction lens, I think I would almost go to the point of, from an employer, making sure that, you know, start with a blank sheet of paper and say, you know, we will work up from zero, rather than just going, well, we'll try it and see what works and hopefully everything goes for the best. I would say that's in relation to anything that's safety critical, obviously. But what we have seen more positively, so when we launched our report earlier this year, we had the health and safety executive were there. And I would say they're almost ahead of other people in industry. They were taking it quite seriously and had done a lot of thinking, including engaging with providers, not necessarily about managing the risks, but about how it would help regulate health and safety in the industry. So I think work is being done. I think ultimately it's something that has to happen both at a global and national level, because these are global and national solutions.
Thank you, Alistair. Tom, do you have any thoughts on that?
I think, as Alistair said, it's a tough one, right? We have to be very mindful of the the impact on the industry for sure. It's a big employer of people. I think ultimately the approach that we've certainly been talking about, and as I have done with peers in the industry, is that we always have to keep in mind what's good for people when we're making these decisions at any point. You know, the simple kind of AI path we're taking at the moment is all about augmenting people's skills and making it more enjoyable for them to work in the business, not about how many jobs we can cut from our business or how it's going to. You know, you can quite see in the future, you know, protection of jobs, making sure that we don't decimate an industry is absolutely what we've got to do. You know, it's potentially the biggest change that will be seen, and construction won't be left out of that. So I think the point is we should have a degree of regulation, but not so heavy that it doesn't let innovation happen, because we need that innovation to improve the industry, because it's been in a pretty poor state of affairs for too many years. So we need to improve.
Okay, need to strike a balance. Obviously, Tom, and you're a tier 1 contractor representative, and Ben, you work for a subsidiary of a tier 1 contractor in Wades. Couple of questions from the audience relating to the relevance of what we've been talking about to SMEs in particular. Is there a risk of SMEs being left behind by the fact that the larger players in the construction sector and the contracting sector might have the financial heft and the organizational bandwidth to accommodate a rapidly evolving technology?
Yeah, no, great question. And personally, I don't see it as a huge risk or a challenge to SMEs. I see it as a huge opportunity. What we're seeing in other industries at the moment is for those kind of smaller organizations to be a bit more reliant upon AI systems to do some of more of that heavy lifting that frees up the human capital to spend their time more appropriate on quality making decisions rather than kind of like low level manual tasks. We're seeing it in the gaming industry where they're leveraging AI to write scripts to build video games as an example, which, you know, 10 years ago you would have a human away writing different forms of scripting to build a video game, but something that's repetitive and has patterns to it. You're seeing these smaller disruptive organizations embracing these types of technology in other industries, and I would see it as a similar opportunity in our own industry whereby you can start, provided you have the right strategy and the right plan and the kind of the right intent behind it, you can start layering some of these more simplistic tools into your business processes to really kind of turbocharge some of that kind of back of house functioning that really the bigger organizations tend to benefit from.
And I just want to add on this, because we also have many customers on the smaller size. We very often see that smaller companies are much more flexible to adopt new technologies. They don't have the long process of approval, implementation, training, etc. They're much more open and quicker to adopt new technologies. So I think that's on the positive side when it comes to SMEs.
Thank you, Pavlina. I know that in your presentations, Tom and Andrew and Ben, the phrase agentic AI cropped up, and there is a question from the audience about that, and would like to ask the panel to look into your crystal ball, become a hostage to fortune, and tell us where you see agentic AI being in the next 3 to 5 years, particularly in the area of generative AI for things like design. Who's brave enough to answer that one first?
I think we a few of us mentioned the fact that we've got these big, and talking about from a contractor's perspective, I think the big bits that trip us up from time to time, there's big chunky areas of planning, design management, change management, commercial management, those type of things. I mean, I think with planning and linking a question, I think was in there around pre-construction activity as well, around, you know, we'd love to be able to provide our clients with, you know, a number of really well thought out options. For instance, the ability to crunch through your historic performance data to understand how you can deliver a really good solution to a client up front by using forms of agentic AI to work those solutions through for you in an intelligent way, I think is probably one area that we could take that down, which would be hugely beneficial for what we could provide outwards, as well as how we can then break that work down more effectively for our supply chain to then price and program that work themselves. So it has a big knock-on effect at the front end, as well as design management. I think there's a huge amount in there around design production, design coordination, getting design ready for construction on time. Huge amount. I think there's probably loads I could talk about, but I'm going to hand it over to others because I know there's probably a few on this one.
Over to you, Alistair.
Yeah, so it's a really interesting. Definitely, agentic AI is the sort of the watchword for 2025. My answer is probably the areas that will see it grow most rapidly will be those where the path to doing so is smoothest. And I think in a construction industry where there are risks, we are already seeing people starting to throw up hurdles to say, hold your horses, let's not do this. So I actually think it will be in the bits of our life that are not specific to construction. So just by way of example, I was listening to a podcast a few days ago, and the chief executive of Microsoft was saying that he, in essence, speaks to 10 different agents every morning, and they tell him what's going on in his email and everything like that. It's not necessarily how a construction site is going. It's about sort of the routine tasks that he would otherwise have to do himself. So to me, that feels where the early thing, because also it's a universal thing. It's not just the construction industry. Its ability to be contagious is going to be much better. Whereas I think there will be some barriers or constraints around using it for anything that might have some form of regulation over it.
Yeah, I think the way I kind of frame it, Alistair, just picking up on your point as well, is I think we'll get most traction with it where there's the least amount of variables and there's the most amount of certainty in the environment in which it's being deployed. So I think classic ones, let's take recruitment for an example, which tends to reside mostly in like the LinkedIn realm and the digital realm nowadays. You can easily foresee a world where people train agents to go and scrape LinkedIn for the best candidates and look at people's posts and the trends that they're posting on and where they live, and even interacting with the candidates to, set up meetings, or even the same for networking, setting up meetings with software vendors as an example, rather than, relying on human capital to do that. Can we deploy an agent in those realms? When we actually pivot back into an inward kind of looking part of the business on that same point is trying to deploy agents within an environment whereby you've got quite disconnected data sets, or you may not even have high quality data sets in the first instance. You're going to get quite low level quality deployment of an agent in that realm. So there is absolutely a correlation between the level of digital maturity that your organization has got and your ability to deploy AI agents. And just to back up Alistair's point, I see it more being deployed where the variables are much smaller and the kind of digital maturity of the platforms it's trawling are much higher. I certainly see a world, picking up on Tom's point as well, where engaging with the supply chain through their performance, their capability, their competency, decisions to make payment, all those kinds of things are very much could operate in that realm, but with the huge caveat of it needs to be operating in a very high digital maturity world before we end up getting to that point.
Yeah, and I just want to echo on what has been said, and where the next couple of years when it comes to construction planning, for example, I imagine that the construction agent would talk to, let's say, the weather agent will talk to the manufacturing agent in order to provide you with decision or advice on, for instance, where to purchase this amount of materials, when they should be delivered in order to be installed based on how the project is progressing, but also weather condition and manufacturing status and things like that.
I think we're almost coming up to time. Maybe just time for one more very, very quick question from the audience. In terms of training, is the panel aware of any specific training courses to help with people in the industry, in the construction industry, getting to grips with AI?
Yeah, I would probably say we receive it. It used to be VIM training. It seems like it's AI training now. Everyone seems to be. We're seeing it a lot for executives and leadership. Everyone thinks like AI being like IT. It's not your IT department's problem. It's a leadership problem that needs to do this. So it's educating the executives, the leadership of how they should use it. And again, that's linked in with the governance. Also, as well, within training, we are looking at lots of areas. Copilot was mentioned. There's a lot of organizations that think they're very mature using Copilot. I think if you get it to summarize your meetings and emails, that's what they say they're mature. There's probably a lot more you can do with that, with linking in agentic AI and creating agents and so on and taking it further. I would probably say, and I think someone did when I had to read through the questions, is what tools do most people use? I would probably say most people need training on ChatGPT because that's all they're using. It literally is all they're using. And whenever people turn around and go, we're not bothered about Copilot, can you tell us how to use ChatGPT? And again, we get asked to do half-day workshops, one-day workshops, you name it, to do with it all. And it can be to be bid writing, proposal writing is a huge one, which everyone seems to be asking a lot for. And again, using like GPTs within ChatGPT, you can sort of create that agentic AI. There's a lot of little hacks that you can do within that. But yeah, I would say that would really enhance the training if people did receive good training to actually receive that.
Yeah, just a quick one. For general data literacy, we did a quite a big piece with Multiverse and through the apprenticeship levy, and that was quite effective. It's a big course, but the people got a lot from it, and are now some of our most effective employees. And I would actually just say Microsoft Academy itself. You know, there's so much good stuff on there around if people want to understand the basics and do it self-paced. It's worth a look.
All right, on that plug for Microsoft, I think that's a good note on which to end. Thank you very much indeed to all our speakers, Tom Loader, Ben Jowett, Pavlina Nikolova, Andrew Johnson, and Alistair Reisner. And thank you too for the audience for joining us. Thank you for all your questions. I'm sorry we didn't have time to answer them all, but we will do our best to do so offline. So I hope everyone found this a very interesting webinar today. Thank you for tuning in, and until next time, goodbye.